I heard my daughter laughing the night she tried to steal my life. Not my money, not my house. My life, everything I'd built with my hands and my heart. She didn't know I was standing in the dark just outside the window, listening while she toasted champagne with the man who planned to take it all. If you're hearing this, I want you to stay. Don't look away. Because what happened next, what I did next, isn't about revenge. It's about reminding people like her that love isn't weakness. My name is Frank Delaney, 62 years old, retired fire captain from Duluth, Minnesota. And if you think retirement means peace, you haven't lived long enough to learn what peace costs. If you're watching this video, hit like, subscribe, and tell me in the comments, have you ever trusted someone you shouldn't have? I want to know how far your story went, because mine went all the way to fire and back. I knew something was wrong the second I saw the lights on. Not just one or two, all of them. The whole damn lake house lit up like a carnival, the reflection trembling across the black water of Lake Superior. And the laughter, that sharp, tinny sound, didn't belong in my house. It was the laughter of people who didn't think they'd ever be caught. I killed the truck's engine and sat there for a long moment, my breath fogging the windshield. November wind was slicing off the lake, carrying that smell of frozen pine and iron. I'd driven 3 hours from Duluth, just wanting to surprise Ellen, maybe sit by the fire, open that bottle of bourbon I'd been saving. It was supposed to be quiet, peaceful. Instead, it felt like standing outside a burning building just before the roof gives way. Old habits die hard. 35 years as a fire captain teach you how to read a scene before you step into it. You look at the angles, the shadows, the way the light spills where it shouldn't. Something in the air shifts, and your gut tells you, don't walk straight in the front door. So I didn't. I slipped out of the truck, boots crunching the frost on the gravel. From where I stood, I could see silhouettes moving behind the curtains, 3 of them. One tall, gesturing wildly with a glass in his hand. Another smaller figure, my daughter Rachel, her head tilted back in laughter that didn't sound like hers. And a third man, older, maybe 50, in a dark suit, posture, too confident to be family. Champagne flutes caught the light. The sound of glasses clinking drifted across the deck. To new beginnings, I heard the stranger say. My heart slowed to that dangerous calm it used to find in the middle of chaos. I moved closer, keeping low by the wall. The back deck wrapped around toward the lake, all cedar and glass, built by my own hands 15 years ago. Every plank, every screw, every window frame had a memory in it. Ellen picked the color of the trim. Rachel used to help paint it, when she was still the kind of kid who'd leave handprints on the wood just to make me laugh. Now she was out there talking like I didn't exist. Once the guardianship papers are through, Adam's voice said, smooth, rehearsed, the salesman tone. I'd always hated the lands as good as ours. The old man won't fight. He can't. And Ellen? Well, she's halfway there already. The stranger chuckled. Cognitive assessment next week, right? Rachel answered, her voice tight, too professional. Friday morning. I told Mom it's just a checkup. After that, we'll have legal grounds to move them into Sunrise Assisted Living. Safer for them. Cleaner for us. The world went silent for a heartbeat. I felt the blood drain from my face, my fingers going cold. Guardianship. Cognitive decline. Assisted living. The words landed like ash in my throat. I'd fought fires that ate through 3-story buildings, crawled into smoke so thick I couldn't see my own hands, but I'd never felt this kind of heat. The kind that starts inside your chest. I leaned against the deck post, eyes closed. Ellen had been forgetful lately. Keys misplaced, phone left on the charger, but I'd blamed the long winters, the quiet. Retirement does that to people. Slows the edges. But this was betrayal wrapped in bureaucracy. Adam poured another round. They won't even notice when they're moved out, he said. Hell, Frank'll probably thank us for taking the burden off his shoulders. Rachel laughed. He's 62, Adam, not immortal. You saw him last summer. He could barely lift the canoe. I gripped the railing so hard the wood groaned under my palm. My knees wanted to give out, but anger held me up. Barely lift the canoe. I'd rebuilt this entire house last year after the storm tore the roof off. I wasn't weak. I wasn't done. I was being erased. Inside, the champagne cork popped. The sound echoed like a gunshot through the night. The stranger, whoever he was, said once the papers are filed, you'll have full control of the assets. How fast can you get the signatures? By tomorrow, Adam said. Ellen trusts Rachel completely. All she has to do is sign. Frank's out of town till Thursday. We'll have everything notarized before he even knows what happened. I stared through the window. The stranger handed Rachel a pen. She twirled it between her fingers, falling. And for the first time in my life, I didn't recognize my daughter. There was no kindness in her face, no trace of the girl who used to climb on my shoulders to watch the 4th of July fireworks. Just calculation. I'd seen that look before on men who set fires for insurance money. The cold precision of someone who convinces themselves it's for the greater good. From inside the house came another sound, a faint one, fragile, out of place. Crying. Soft at first, then sharper, breaking through the hum of conversation. Ellen. I stepped back, heart hammering. She was in the master bedroom down the hall from the kitchen. I couldn't see her, but I could hear the sobs, short, desperate gasps, the kind that come when someone's holding everything in too long. Rachel didn't even pause. That was it. The line burned clean through. I moved along the deck until I was directly behind the sliding doors. The wind carried my reflection in the glass gray hair, old flannel jacket eyes that had seen too much smoke. I remembered something my old captain used to say, a house fire's only dangerous if you go in blind. Know your exits, read your heat. So I read it. The laughter, the lies, the betrayal. And then I walked straight into the blaze. The door slid open with a low groan. All three turned, the laughter freezing midair. The stranger's hand stopped halfway to his glass. Adam's smile died first. Rachel's face went pale. I stepped forward, slow, steady, like I was walking through a burning hallway. My voice came out calm, almost ghostly, but the kind of quiet that makes people listen. You're talking about my property, aren't you? Silence. The kind that swallows every excuse before it's spoken. The champagne glass slipped from Adam's hand and hit the deck, shattering into a dozen tiny stars at our feet. The sound echoed through the house, like the breaking of something far older than glass, something that used to be called family. Rachel was the first to find her voice. Dad, she said, her smile trembling at the edges, you're home early. I let the door shut behind me. The sound was sharp, final, like the lid closing on a coffin. Looks that way, I said. Didn't want to miss the party. Adam stepped forward, one hand up, as if I were a wild animal he didn't want to spook. Frank, we were just discussing my mental decline. I cut in. Or maybe the assisted living brochure I saw on the table, hard to tell from outside. The color drained from his face. Rachel shot him a warning look before turning toward me, that practiced calm she used to use when she wanted something from me. Dad, please don't misunderstand. We were only talking about options. You and Mom have been forgetful lately. We worry about you out here alone in winter. Forgetful. I let the word hang in the air. Rachel, I've rebuilt half this house with these hands. I can still split a cord of oak before breakfast. What exactly am I forgetting? She glanced at Adam, searching for backup. It's not about ability. It's about safety. You shouldn't be climbing ladders or driving in snowstorms. Adam he cares about you. That's all. Adam found his voice again. We want to protect you, Frank. Last winter, an elderly couple down the road froze to death when their furnace went out. You remember that? Sure do, I said. I'm the one who fixed their damn furnace the week before it happened. They died because they didn't listen. The room went still. I could hear the clock ticking in the hallway, steady as a heartbeat. Rachel's eyes softened for half a second, then hardened again. Where's your mother? I asked. She's resting, Rachel said quickly. She wasn't feeling well. That was enough. I brushed past them, ignoring Adam's attempt to stop me. The hallway felt longer than I remembered, the floor creaking under my boots, like an old man whispering secrets. Ellen's door was half closed, light leaking out in a thin, trembling line. Ellen? Her voice came small. Frank. I pushed the door open. She was sitting on the edge of the bed, still dressed, her hair a little wild, eyes red and puffy. The bedside lamp threw pale circles across her face. In her lap was a folder of papers, one page sticking out, power of attorney. Rachel said, It's just a formality, she whispered, holding it out like a confession. Something to make sure we're protected if something happens to us. I took the folder, gently scanning the top lines. Legal jargon, fine print, all the right words in all the wrong places. At the bottom, blank signature lines for me and Ellen. Did you sign anything? She shook her head. I wanted to read it first, but she kept saying I was overthinking. She made me tea, said it would calm me down. Her pupils were wide, unfocused. Her hand trembled as she reached for mine. Frank, I feel strange, like I'm floating. I brought the teacup from the nightstand to my nose. Chamomile, and something else, something metallic bitter underneath. I'd seen enough drug cases in my years on call to recognize the smell. A light sedative, maybe crushed pills. Nothing fatal, but enough to dull the mind. I set it down carefully. You're going to be okay, I said. Just lie back for a bit. She tried to protest, but her body gave in before her voice could. I pulled the blanket over her shoulders and watched her breathing slow. That calm I used to find at a fire scene returned, the kind that comes when everything inside you catches flame, but you stay ice cold on the outside. I stepped out and closed the door softly behind me. The hallway felt colder now, like the house itself had turned against me. From the living room came muffled voices, Rachel whispering, Adam's deeper tone answering a nervous rhythm. I ignored them and pulled my phone from my pocket. 10 missed calls from Michael, then 12, then 14. I called him back, straight to voicemail. I tried again. Nothing. Just that robotic voice telling me my son couldn't be reached. Michael lived in Chicago, 3 states away, but he was the one who checked on us the most. The one who'd insisted I install security cameras and digital locks. He'd said, You never know who'll come knocking when you're retired, Dad. He wasn't wrong. I scrolled through his last text. Call me ASAP. Don't sign anything. It's about Rachel and Adam. Important. My thumb froze on the screen. He knew. Somehow he knew. I slipped the phone into my pocket and stood in the dark hallway listening. The laughter was gone now. Just low voices, urgent. My own heartbeat filled the silence, steady, controlled. A gust of wind rattled the windows, shaking the frost loose. The lake outside moaned against the rocks. It sounded almost like breathing, deep, patient waiting. I looked back toward the bedroom, at the faint line of light under the door, and felt something settle in my chest. Not fear, not sadness. Something older, heavier. The same thing I used to feel walking into a burning house, resolve. I'd fought fires that wanted to take everything from me. This one just looked different. I went back to the front hall, took off my coat, and hung it on the hook where it always hung. My reflection stared back from the window, 62 gray at the temples, eyes clear. Not senile, not done. From the living room, Rachel's voice rose again, brittle with panic. He's going to ruin everything, she hissed. Adam's reply came sharp. Then we speeded up. Tonight. I smiled without humor. They picked the wrong night for this, I said under my breath, and the house, old and loyal, seemed to hear me. The house was breathing heavy, like it knew something was wrong. Every creak of the wood, every whisper of the wind against the siding, it all felt alive, nervous, waiting for me to make the next move. I walked down the hallway toward my study, that small corner room I'd built myself 15 years ago, when the department finally forced me to take weekends off. It still smelled faintly of cedar and old smoke. On the wall hung my retirement plaque, 35 years of service with the Duluth Fire Department, and next to it, a framed photo of the four of us. At the lake, back when Rachel still smiled like she meant it. I shut the door, turned the lock, and went straight for the safe behind the bookshelf. My fingers remembered the combination before my head did. The dial clicked into place like an old friend. Inside, the deed to the house, our joint savings book, insurance records, and a thick folder Ellen had labeled, Health. Important. I set it on the desk. The top sheet was a typed report letterhead from Dr. Lowell Pierce, Geriatric Cognitive Specialist, Duluth Medical Center. My name and Ellen's were printed neatly beneath it. Preliminary findings: mild cognitive decline, possible early-stage dementia. My stomach turned cold. I flipped through the pages. The assessment described conversations that never happened, symptoms we never had. Subject appears confused regarding dates. Subject repeats questions. Recommended guardianship evaluation. It was polished, professional-looking, and completely fabricated. At the bottom was a neat signature, Lowell Pierce, M.U.M.D.A.S.A., except there was a problem. Dr. Pierce wasn't a geriatric specialist. He'd been our family's chiropractor 10 years ago. I'd seen him once for a shoulder strain. I remembered the man, awkward, polite, terrified of needles. There was no universe where he'd diagnosed dementia. I set back the paper, shaking in my hand. This wasn't a misunderstanding anymore. This was construction, brick by brick, of a trap. Rachel and Adam hadn't just lied. They'd built a false reality around us, backed by fake professionals and legal guardianship forms. And they had almost pulled it off. I pulled out my phone and took photos of every page. Then I slid my smartwatch onto record mode, something Michael had taught me after I almost got scammed by a contractor last year. He'd laughed when he showed me. Never hurts to have a second witness, Dad. He was right. Tonight, I needed a witness. From the other side of the wall, I heard muffled voices again. Rachel's tone sharp, clipped, the voice she used when she was trying to control a situation. Carson, they're both being impossible, she hissed. He came home early. I don't know how he found out. Carson. That was a new name. I crept closer, pressing my ear to the wall. A man's voice came through on speakerphone, deep, oily, confident. Rachel, listen to me carefully. You've got the paperwork right. Yes. Then get them signed tonight. If you wait, you lose your window. Once the cognitive evaluation's delayed, the judge can't approve guardianship this quarter. Do you understand what that means? I do, but nothing. Carson snapped. You wanted to fix this. This is how you fix it. Old people change their minds. That's why you get signatures before they start asking questions. Adam muttered something under his breath, but Carson cut him off too. Adam, don't get soft on me now. You're already in deep enough. If the investors smell fear, it's over. Investors, guardianship, signatures. It all wove together into something uglier than greed, cold calculation wrapped in the language of care. I stepped back from the wall, thumb brushing against the watch screen, making sure the recording was still running. Red light. Good. For a moment, I thought about bursting in, tearing the phone from Rachel's hand, shouting the truth into her face. But the firefighter in me, the man who'd learned that timing could mean life or death, stayed still. You don't break through a door until you know what's behind it. Let them talk. Let them hang themselves with their own words. Carson's voice lowered, but I caught the last line. By midnight, Rachel. After that, the offer's gone. Do whatever it takes. The call clicked dead. Silence. Then Rachel's sharp exhale. We have to get her to sign Adam. If we don't, it's all for nothing. Adam's reply came quieter, almost pleading. She's your mother, Rach. Maybe we stop. Stop, Rachel's voice cracked. And let them lose everything. You don't understand. We're already out of time. Their footsteps moved away toward the kitchen. Cabinet doors opened. The kettle started whistling. Tea again. I stayed in the study, sitting perfectly still, listening to the familiar sounds of my home being used for something cruel. The air was thick, heavy, the same weight as smoke before a flashover. I turned to the window. Out there, the lake was still as glass, holding its breath, under a sheet of ice. It looked peaceful, but I knew that just beneath it, the current was fierce enough to pull a man under in seconds. Fire and ice, same kind of danger. Both beautiful, both deadly when underestimated. My mind went back to Ellen. I slipped the forged medical file into my jacket and walked quietly down the hall. The bedroom light was still on, soft and golden. She was stirring a faint movement under the blanket. Ellen, I whispered. Her eyes fluttered open, oddly unfocused. Frank, I'm here. She blinked, confusion clouding her face. What time is it? Late? You've been asleep. She sat up slowly, rubbing her temple. My head feels heavy. I know. The tea, I said quietly. Understanding flickered in her eyes, fear then guilt. Rachel made it. She said I needed to calm down. Her voice broke. Frank, maybe she's right. Maybe we are getting too old. Maybe they just want what's best. I sat on the edge of the bed, took her cold hand in mine. Ellen, look at me, I said. Old doesn't mean helpless. We fought fires, we raised kids, we built this place with our hands. Nobody gets to erase that. Not them, not anyone. Her fingers tightened around mine, fragile but sure. Somewhere down the hall the kettle screamed, and I heard Rachel's voice again, calling out softly, rehearsing her next lie. I stood up, checked my watch. The red light was still blinking. Every word, every sound was being captured. Let them talk. Let them think they were winning. Because the fire was already spreading, and this time, I was the one holding the match. The night stretched on, like it didn't know how to end. The lake outside was still and black, the kind of stillness that only happens before a storm, or after something breaks. I sat at the kitchen table, my phone in my hand, the red recording light on my watch, blinking like a heartbeat. Rachel and Adam were whispering in the living room, their voices thin and tight. Ellen had fallen back asleep, the sedative still working through her system. I called Michael again. This time he picked up. Dad. His voice was thick with sleep and worry. Yeah, I said quietly. I need you to come home. Now. It's almost midnight. Bring your laptop and a clear head. He didn't ask why. Michael never did. The silence between us was short, but full of understanding, the kind that only comes from blood and trust. I'm on my way, he said, then hung up. When I turned around, Rachel was standing in the doorway, her arms crossed, that fake concern back on her face. You called Michael. That's right. Her voice sharpened. Dad, that's not necessary. He doesn't know what's going on here. I think he's about to, I said, and poured myself a cup of coffee. She watched me for a long moment, calculating. This doesn't have to get ugly, she said finally. You and Mom can make this easy. Just sign the documents. It's standard stuff. Power of attorney, medical proxy. Everyone does it. You're overreacting. I sipped my coffee. You sound like a broker closing a deal. Her jaw clenched. I'm trying to help you. By drugging your mother. That made her flinch. She was panicking. I didn't. You didn't. What I cut in. Mean to you think intent makes a difference? For a second the mask slipped. Her face twisted, and I saw something raw underneath fear. Not of me, but of losing control. Adam came in behind her, phone in hand. Carson says the signatures have to be in tonight, he said flatly, not even looking at me. Rachel turned on him, whispering harshly. I told you not to say his name, but I heard it. Carson. The same voice from the call. Why the rush? I asked, afraid I might outlive the paperwork. Adam ignored the jab and grabbed the folder from the counter. You're making this harder than it needs to be, Frank. It's for your protection. Legally, this covers you both in case of... In case of what? I rose slowly. In case I figure out what you're doing. Adam's composure cracked for the first time. Damn it, Frank. You don't understand how deep this goes. Then explain it to me. Rachel stepped between us, voice trembling. Dad, please, you don't get it. He's in trouble, all right. He owes people. Real people. If we don't fix this, something bad will happen. They could come after us. There it is, I said softly. The truth finally. You're not protecting us. You're protecting yourselves. Adam slammed his hand down on the counter. The coffee mug jumped, spilling across the polished wood. His voice rose brittle with desperation. We're trying to save our family. You're burning it down, I said. He reached for a glass on the island, his hand shaking. You don't understand pressure, he muttered. I almost laughed. I spent 30 years walking into buildings ready to explode. Don't tell me about pressure. The glass slipped from his grip and hit the table's edge, shattering into 1,000 jagged shards. One piece spun across the surface and stopped right in front of me, catching the light. It looked like a crack spreading through ice. For a long second, nobody whistled. Rachel stared at the mess, her breath shallow. Ellen's soft voice floated from the hallway. What was that? Rachel turned, panic flickering. Nothing, Mom. Just an accident. But Ellen appeared in the doorway anyway, pale and unsteady, holding onto the frame for balance. Her voice was small, frightened. I heard shouting. Go back to bed, sweetheart, I said gently. We'll handle this. Rachel moved toward her. Mom, please just sign the papers. It's for your safety. Carson says, who the hell is Carson? Ellen asked, confusion sharpening to anger. Rachel froze, her face drained of color. He's our advisor. He's helping us manage things. Manage what? Ellen's voice cracked. Our leaves. I took the papers from Rachel's hand and ripped them clean in two. The sound was loud and final. That's enough, I said. Rachel gasped like I'd struck her. You don't know what you're doing. No, I said, calm again. I know exactly what I'm doing. I'm putting out a fire before it burns through the floor. Adam muttered something under his breath, something about ruined chances and deadlines. Rachel turned on him, whispering furiously. The two of them looked like conspirators who'd just realized the plan was collapsing around them. Ellen sank into a chair, trembling. Frank, she said softly, maybe we should just let them handle it. Maybe it's easier. I knelt beside her, took her hand. No, Ellen. Easier isn't safer. You don't hand your life away because someone says it's complicated. She nodded weakly, but her eyes stayed on Rachel. Why would you do this? She whispered. Rachel's lips quivered, but she said nothing. The wind howled outside, rattling the windows. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled, soft, delayed, but coming closer. I glanced at the clock. 1:15 a.m. Michael would be here soon. The thought steadied me. He'd know what to do. He always did. I turned to Rachel and Adam, who stood frozen by the counter like children caught with matches. You two should start thinking about what you're going to tell him, I said. Rachel frowned. Tell who headlights swept across the front windows bright and slow, cutting through the frost. The crunch of tires on gravel followed steady and sure. I smiled for the first time all night. Now I said quietly, we'll see who's really losing their memory. Michael arrived just before dawn. Headlights, sweeping over the frosted pines, his wife Sarah beside him, a thermos of coffee in one hand, and something colder in her eyes. The two of them moved like a practice team, quiet alert assessing. I met them at the front door. Rachel and Adam were still inside, sitting stiff on the couch, like they were waiting for a sentence to be read. Ellen dozed by the fireplace, pale, but breathing easier. Michael set his laptop on the table and looked around the room, once reading the scene like a detective reads a crime. Tell me everything, he said. I did. I told him about the forged medical papers, the fake doctor, the legal push to get us to sign over our home. His expression didn't change, just that steady, quiet focus I remembered from the day he graduated the academy. Dr. Pierce, he asked. I handed him the folder. He flipped through it fast, frowning. This is clean work. Too clean for amateurs. Sarah leaned over his shoulder, her tone brisk and professional. What's your gut say? Michael pulled out his phone, typing something quick. Within a minute, his screen lit up with a profile photo. Here, he said, turning it toward me. Dr. Lowell Pierce, real guy. But he's a chiropractor in Duluth, not a cognitive specialist. Which means someone's using his identity. Sarah's brow furrowed. That's not just fraud, that's organized. This kind of thing doesn't happen in a vacuum. Rachel stirred on the couch. Michael, you don't understand, she said, voice shaking. Adam and I, we didn't mean to hurt anyone. Then you can start by telling me who Carson Hale is, Michael said, eyes on the screen. Rachel hesitated. Adam's jaw tightened. He's our lawyer, Adam muttered. Not according to the Minnesota Bar Association, Michael said coolly. He was disbarred 6 years ago. Fraud, coercion, identity theft. He runs a shell company out of St. Paul. Guess what kind of clients he prefers? Rachel's lip trembled. He said he could help us protect Mom and Dad legally. Michael's gaze cut through her words. He said a lot of things, didn't he? Like how, if you got Mom's signature tonight, he'd make your husband's gambling debt disappear. Rachel froze. Ellen stirred in her chair. Gambling, she whispered, weak but sharp. Adam? What is he talking about? Adam looked at the floor. I just got in too deep. A few bets, that's all. I thought I could turn it around. How much? I asked. He swallowed hard. 250,000. The number hung in the air like Zisti. Sarah exhaled slowly. That's not a debt. That's a noose. Adam's voice cracked. It wasn't supposed to go this far. Carson said, if we could put the property in a trust, he'd help refinance. It was just supposed to buy time. Michael opened his laptop, connecting to something invisible in the air. I'm going to need your computer, Adam. What for? Because I don't believe a word you've said. Adam hesitated, but one look from me, and he handed it over. Michael plugged in a small drive and started typing, the blue glow of the screen reflecting in his glasses. Sarah poured coffee and stood guard, arms crossed. For half an hour, the only sounds were the clicking of keys and the low hiss of wind off the lake. Then Michael stopped typing. Got it, he said softly. He turned the screen toward us. Dozens of emails filled the monitor, subject lines like Project Lakeview Haven Contract Transfer and Resort Development Proposal. Attached were architectural drafts and projected earnings. The sender, Adam Donald Holt, LakeviewConsults.com. The recipient, Carson Hale, LegacyLawGroup.net. I read one aloud. Once guardianship is finalized, we proceed with deed transfer. Projected sale, $3.2 million. Developer requires confirmation both principals are mentally incapacitated. Proceed with doctor's statement. It was all there, the plan, the motive, the price of betrayal. Rachel covered her mouth. Oh my God, she whispered. He lied to me. He said we were protecting you. Sarah leaned over Michael's shoulder. There's more, she said, pointing to a string of encrypted messages. Payment receipts, offshore accounts. This isn't just a one-off scam. Carson's running a network. Elder exploitation. Fake doctors, falsified power of attorney, fraudulent real estate transfers. Michael nodded grimly. He picks families with assets and kids desperate enough to cooperate. Adam here was the perfect mark. Adam's voice was barely a whisper. I didn't know it was like this. You didn't want to know, I said. The house went silent again, the kind of silence that presses down like snow. Ellen looked at Rachel, tears spilling down her cheeks. You were going to take our home, she said boldly. The one we built for you. Rachel fell to her knees in front of her mother. I thought I was saving us, Mom. I swear. Carson said it was the only way. Ellen's hand trembled as she reached for her daughter's hair. Saving us from what? From love. From trust. Rachel broke, then really broke, and began to sob. Michael didn't move. He just closed his laptop with a soft click and looked at me. Dad, we have enough evidence to bury them both. Emails, drafts, bank transfers. I nodded. We're not burying anyone. We're letting the police handle it. But first I want every word, every file saved. Already done, he said, cloud backup, external drive, and time-stamped. Carson can't touch this. Sarah came to stand beside me. Her hand brushed my arm, firm, steady, the kind of grip that comes from seeing too many people bleed out before help arrived. She looked at Rachel, then Adam, then back at me. You're not dealing with your daughter anymore, she said quietly. You're dealing with criminals. By evening, the storm had settled over the lake like a shroud. Wind clawed at the windows and the lights flickered just enough to make every face look haunted. The fire in the hearth burned low, throwing long shadows across the living room. It wasn't a home tonight. It was a courtroom. And I was the judge, the witness, and the jury all at once. Michael set up his laptop on the coffee table. The glow of the screen cut through the dimness, cold and sterile. On one side sat Rachel and Adam. On the other, Ellen and I. Sarah stood near the door like a sentry, arms folded, eyes sharp. I took a deep breath. We're going to get this all out in the open, I said. Every word, every lie, every dollar. Tonight we settle it. Rachel wiped her face, her mascara smudged. Dad, please no, I said quietly. No more talking, just listening. Michael hit play. The first sound was Rachel's own voice from the night before, calm, efficient cutting. Once the guardianship papers are through, the land's as good as ours. Then Adam's laugh. They won't even notice when they're moved out. Rachel covered her mouth, shaking her head. That's out of context. Context doesn't change the words, Michael said evenly. Then came Carson's voice from the recorded call, slick and commanding. Get the signatures before morning. Once they are declared incompetent, it's a formality. Move fast. Ellen flinched at the sound. Tears slid silently down her cheeks. Rachel whispered, He told us it was legal. He said it was to protect you. I leaned forward. Protect us from what? Our own house, our own memories. Adam's patience cracked. You don't get it, Frank. You think this is about greed. Carson's people don't wait. If I don't pay, I'm dead. Michael looked up from his screen, voice, calm but deadly. You owe $257,000 to an offshore sports book registered in Belize. The only people coming for you are creditors with lawyers, not hitmen. Adam's eyes darted toward the door. I'm done here, he muttered, standing. Michael moved faster, stepping between him and the exit. Sit down. Adam's hands clenched into fists. You can't keep me here. Actually, Michael said, locking the deadbolt with a solid click. I can. Until the sheriff gets here. Rachel gasped. You called the police. Not yet, I said. But I will. The fire popped sparks, jumping like nervous energy. The whole room felt on edge like a live wire ready to snap. Adam's face twisted. You think they'll save you? Carson will bury you in court. He knows how to make this disappear. Then let's ask him ourselves, I said, pulling out my phone. Adam froze. Go on, I said, nodding toward him. Call him. Put him on speaker. He hesitated, then punched in the number with trembling fingers. The line rang once, twice. Then a voice answered, low and venom smooth. Adam, tell me you've got the papers. Adam glanced at me, panic rising. Yeah, almost. We're just sorting things out. Carson's voice sharpened. What's to sort? Do whatever it takes. Signed papers by midnight, or we're done. Do you hear me? The air in the room went still. I pressed the record button on my phone, the soft beep echoing louder than any siren I'd ever heard. Rachel whispered, Carson, please, this is my family. But he cut her off. Then stop pretending it isn't business. You want your husband alive. You want that debt gone. Get the damn signatures. Then the line went dead. The silence afterward was heavier than the storm outside. Ellen buried her face in her hands, sobbing quietly. Michael reached over and closed his laptop. The glow faded, leaving us all in half-light. Adam looked around the room like a trapped animal. You don't understand, he said, his voice breaking. This man isn't going to stop. He's got people everywhere. I stood slow and steady. My joints ached, but my voice came out like iron. Son, I said, I spent 30 years walking into fire. I understand just fine. The flashing blue lights came through the trees around 3 a.m, slicing through the dark like blades. The crunch of tires on frozen gravel was followed by the low murmur of voice and the hiss of radios. For the first time that night, I felt the weight lift just enough to breathe. 2 squad cars, one unmarked SE. Sheriff Paul McKenna stepped out first, gray-haired, heavy-shouldered, his old turnout jacket visible under the parka. We'd fought fires together back in the 90s, crawling through smoke and glass, before either of us knew how much a lifetime of service could burn into your bones. Frank, he said, pulling off his gloves. You picked one hell of a night. I nodded. So did they. Inside the room looked like the aftermath of a storm. Papers scattered, coffee spilled, the ghosts of arguments still hanging in the air. Rachel sat slumped on the couch, eyes hollow. Adam stood near the window, hands shaking, half in shadow. Paul took one look at the scene and didn't need an explanation. Walk me through it. Michael handed over the drive. All the recordings are here. Audio, emails, bank transfers, legal documents, all time-stamped. Sarah added quietly. Ellen was drugged. She's stable now, but she needs to see a doctor. Paul nodded grimly. He turned to his deputies. Separate them. Read the husband his rights. Adam started to protest, voice cracking. You don't understand. Carson forced this. Paul's gaze hardened. You want to talk coercion. You can do it downtown. The cuffs clicked, metallic and final. Adam's face drained of color as they led him out into the cold. Rachel didn't move, didn't even lift her head when they approached her. Ma'am, one of the deputies said softly, we're going to need you to come too. She whispered something I couldn't hear. Maybe it was sorry. Maybe it was nothing. Sarah knelt beside Ellen, who had gone pale again, her breathing shallow. Ellen, stay with me, she said gently. Ellen's eyes fluttered open for a second, then rolled back. Paul, I barked. We need a medic. Sarah was already on it, checking her pulse, loosening the collar of her sweater. "She's just fainted," she said after a moment. "Shock exhaustion, maybe the sedative. She'll be okay." I stood there, useless hands shaking, watching the woman who'd built her entire life beside society go still. All I could think about was how close we'd come to losing more than a house. They loaded Ellen into the ambulance, Sarah riding with her. I followed in the sheriff's SUV, the heater humming against the frost. At the station, everything blurred together. Statements, signatures, the endless click of keyboards. Michael moved like a machine, providing evidence, connecting files, outlining the scam piece by piece. I sat in a corner, a styrofoam cup of coffee cooling in my hands. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind only the ache, the deep, bone-deep ache of betrayal. When it was finally my turn, Paul handed me a pad of lined paper. "Need you to write your statement, Frank. In your own words." I stared at the blank page for a long time before the pen touched it. The letters came shaky, uneven. My handwriting looked older than I remembered. They tried to take everything we built. That was all I wrote for the first few minutes. Then the rest poured out, every lie, every fear, every word I'd overheard on that frozen night. When I handed the pages to Paul, he read the first line and nodded. "We'll get them, Frank. I promise." I believed him. I wanted to. As I walked down the corridor to leave, I passed one of the interview rooms. Through the glass, Rachel sat alone at a metal table. No cuffs, but no freedom either. Her eyes were open, but empty, staring at nothing. Half fear, half something worse, recognition. The kind of look people get when they finally see the fire they started and realize they can't put it out. For a long moment, I almost went in. Then I didn't. Some lessons have to burn. Outside, the snow had started again, soft and relentless. The deputies were finishing paperwork near the cruiser. I pulled out my phone to call Sarah to check on Ellen. Before I could dial, the screen lit up with a new message from an unknown number. "This isn't over. People like you never win." No signature. Just the text pulsing against the dark. "Carson." The storm wind howled through the lot, rattling the flagpole outside the station. I looked at that message one more time, then deleted it. "Maybe not tonight," I muttered, sliding the phone into my pocket, "but I'm not done fighting." 2 months passed, and winter didn't let go easily. The lake froze over completely by February, smooth, white, endless. Some mornings, it looked almost peaceful, like the world was holding its breath. The trials came fast after that. Michael's evidence made the prosecutor's job easy. Adam Holt was sentenced to 6 years in Stillwater Correctional for fraud, elder coercion, and falsifying medical records. The judge called his actions a premeditated betrayal, wrapped in desperation. He didn't look up once during sentencing. Carson Hale didn't get off easy either. The FB picked him up in Iowa, trying to cross into Nebraska under a false name. Turns out, our little family scam was part of a much larger operation on elder exploitation, shell companies, and money laundering. He was indicted on 17 federal counts. No bail. Rachel's case was harder. She'd cooperated, handed over the rest of Carson's files, even testified against Adam. She wasn't charged criminally, but the state real estate board revoked her license permanently. The court ordered her to attend a year-long community restitution program, ethics counseling, volunteer work at senior centers. Restorative justice, they called it. I called it mercy. Ellen and I moved back to Duluth, into a small apartment near the harbor. The lake house was too full of ghosts. Too many memories sitting in the corners waiting for night to fall. Ellen was recovering physically anyway. Emotionally, that was another story. She startled at every noise, couldn't sleep unless the lights were on. The sound of a door opening made her flinch. Once she woke me in the middle of the night, her hand gripping my arm so hard I thought she'd draw blood. "She was here," she whispered. "Rachel." I heard her in the hallway. It wasn't Rachel, of course, just the wind against the window, the old building settling. But I didn't correct her. I just held her hand until she drifted off again. We filled the days with quiet routines. Coffee by the window, walks by the frozen harbor. Sarah and Michael visited every weekend, bringing groceries and laughter and news from the city. We didn't talk about November much. The words were still too sharp. Then one morning in late February, a letter came. No return address. Just my name written in a hand I'd known since the day she learned to write her first R. I sat at the table, the smell of Ellen's cinnamon toast filling the air. I didn't open it right away. Just stared at it, feeling the weight of it, the way you feel a scar through your clothes. When I finally tore it open, the handwriting inside was small and uneven. "Dad, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't even think I deserve it. But I want to understand something. That night, when everything fell apart, when you saw what I'd done, you still looked at me like I was your daughter. How did you do that? How could you keep believing in me even then, Rachel?" I folded the letter carefully, set it on the windowsill, and stared out at the lake. The ice stretched for miles, cracked in places like veins in glass. Somewhere beneath it, the current still moved slow, patient, unstoppable. Ellen came up behind me, wrapping a shawl around my shoulders. "What's that?" she asked softly. "Just a letter," I said. "From her?" I nodded. "Are you going to answer?" "Not today." She didn't press. She just leaned her head against my arm. We stood like that for a long time, watching the light shift over the frozen water. Outside, a fire truck siren wailed faintly, somewhere downtown, distant, familiar, almost comforting. I thought about Rachel as a child, 5 years old, standing on the curb in her yellow coat, waving at the trucks every time they passed. She used to think I was a hero back then. Maybe I was once. I looked out over the white horizon and whispered, mostly to myself, because I remember the little girl who used to watch the fire trucks and wave. By April, the ice on Lake Superior began to break apart, groaning like an old beast waking from sleep. You could hear it at night, the slow, deep cracks echoing across the water. Spring had come late, but it had come. Ellen and I drove back up to the lake house the first weekend of May. The air was still cold enough to bite, but the sun felt real again. Michael was already there when we arrived, ladder propped against the roof, replacing shingles lost to winter storms. Sarah was in the garden, kneeling in the dirt, planting crocuses along the stone path Ellen had built 20 years ago. It looked different now, calmer, honest. Like the house itself had exhaled after holding its breath all winter. Ellen stood on the porch steps watching Sarah work. "It's beautiful," she said quietly. "It will be." Sarah smiled, brushing dirt from her hands. "Just needs time to grow again." That night, we ate dinner together, roast chicken, mashed potatoes, too much coffee. We laughed about things that didn't matter, and for a few hours, it almost felt like the old days. The world before signatures and betrayals and fake doctors. After they went to bed, I stayed up late, sitting on the deck, listening to the ice breaking on the lake. I thought about how something could look solid and still shatter with the right amount of heat. The next morning, an envelope came from the Duluth Police Department. Inside was a letter signed by Sheriff McKenna. "Frank, we're hosting a community seminar on elder fraud awareness next month at City Hall. We'd like you to speak. Your story could help a lot of folks." I stared at the words for a long time. I'd spent most of my life fighting fires, not giving speeches. But maybe this was just another way to keep something from burning down. "Do it," Ellen said when I showed her the letter. "People should hear the truth." So I agreed. The hall was packed that day. Seniors, families, reporters, officers. Banners on the walls read, "Protect what you've built, and fraud has no family." The irony wasn't lost on me. I stood behind the podium, my notes trembling in my hands, and told the story, how trust turns fragile, how love can be used as a weapon, how even a seasoned firefighter can miss the smoke rising inside his own home. When I finished, the room was silent. Not the kind of silence that asks for more, but the kind that says people were listening, really listening. Then from the back of the room, a voice said softly, "Dad." It was Rachel. For a moment, I thought I'd imagined her. She looked smaller somehow, thinner. Her hair pulled back. No makeup, wearing a simple gray sweater and jeans. People turned to look. She kept her eyes on me. As she walked down the aisle, her steps slow but sure. "May I say something?" she asked the moderator. He looked at me. I nodded once. Rachel took my place behind the podium. Her hands shook as she gripped the sides. "My name is Rachel Holt." She began, her voice breaking, "and 2 years ago I betrayed my parents." The words landed heavy in the room. "I told myself I was helping them," she continued, "that I was protecting them from their own mistakes. But really I was protecting myself from fear, from shame, from the mess my husband and I created. I let someone convince me that love could be rewritten on paper, that control was the same thing as care. And in doing that, I almost destroyed the people who gave me everything." She stopped, wiped her eyes, then went on. "There's no forgiveness big enough for what I did. I'm not asking for it. I just want to say, if anyone here thinks they can fix their life by taking someone else's, it doesn't work. You just burn down what you were trying to save." Her voice broke again. I can still see my dad that night, standing in the doorway asking one question, "You're talking about my property, aren't you?" And I realized I wasn't his daughter in that moment. I was his enemy. Her tears fell freely now. I don't want to be that person anymore. When she finished, the room stayed quiet. No applause, no murmurs. Just the sound of a few people sniffling softly. Rachel stepped away from the podium, eyes downcast, and left through the side door. I didn't follow. Neither did Ellen. We waited until the hall emptied, then walked outside into the cool afternoon air. The sky over Duluth was pale blue, the kind that comes right before rain. For a long time, we didn't say anything. Then Ellen asked softly, "Do you think she meant it?" I looked out at the horizon, at the faint shimmer of the thawing lake beyond the city. "I think I said she finally saw the fire," she started. A year later, the lake was calm again. The kind of calm that only comes after everything that could burn has already burned. Spring had returned early that year, soft winds, clear skies, and water so still it looked like glass. Ellen and I sat at the same oak table where the papers had once been signed, the same table that had nearly ended our family. But this time there were no lies on it, just a single sheet of legal parchment and a black pen. My new will. Michael and his family were there, Sarah pouring coffee, the kids chasing each other out on the lawn, their laughter drifting in with the lake breeze. The sound filled the house again, steady and alive. I signed my name slowly, my hand trembling only slightly. When I was done, I looked over the last line, the one clause I'd written myself: "Rachel may visit every Thanksgiving." That's enough. No bitterness, no grand gesture, just truth. Forgiveness didn't mean forgetting. It meant boundaries, and I'd learned the hard way that even love needs those. Ellen looked at the paper and smiled faintly. "You sure about that?" "Yeah," I said. "Once a year's about all my heart can handle." She laughed softly, the kind of laugh I hadn't heard from her in too long. The afternoon sun poured through the windows, bathing the wood floor in gold. Out on the porch, Michael was showing his kids how to cast a fishing line into the shallows, the same spot where Rachel learned years ago, when the world was still simple. Ellen joined me on the porch, slipping her hand into mine. The air smelled of pine and thawing earth. Across the lake, the water caught the light and threw it back at us in flashes of silver. I thought retirement would be quiet, I said, watching the sun sink lower. Turns out, it was my final test, to see if I could still stand my ground. Ellen leaned against my shoulder, eyes soft with the kind of love that survives everything. You passed, she said. The kids laughed down by the dock, their voices echoing over the water. Sarah called out something about dinner, and Michael waved back, his son tugging at his sleeve to show off a tiny fish wriggling at the end of the line. I felt something in my chest loosen, a peace I hadn't known in years. Not the peace of forgetting, but the peace of surviving. The ski turned copper, then deep rose the lake, catching every color and holding it close. I knew someday it would freeze again. Storms would come, life would shift. But for now it was enough. As the last light faded, I looked out over Lake Superior, that endless mirror of memory and endurance. My voice came quiet, steady, not for anyone else, but maybe for whatever came next. Age doesn't make you weak. Fear does. And love makes you fight for what's worth keeping. The house stood strong, weathered, but still standing. Just like us. You know, people think getting older means getting colder. They think we forget, that we fade, that we just let things go. But I didn't let it go. I stood my ground. Because what Ellen and I built, this home, this life, it mattered. Forgiveness doesn't mean opening the same door again. It means locking it, but leaving the light on, just in case someone you once loved finds their way back. So if you've ever been betrayed, if you've ever had to start over, remember, this age doesn't make you weak. Fear does. And love, real love, it makes you fight for what's worth keeping. Tell me in the comments, what would you have done?